Imagine this, you're standing in her kitchen. The light is low. You've been patient, kind beyond reason. You've listened to her vent about work, comforted her through her family drama, given her space when she asked for it. You've shown up again and again because that's what good men do. But something's shifted. She's distant now, colder, less affectionate. She doesn't ask how you're doing anymore, not because she's distracted, but because somewhere along the way, your patience stopped being a virtue and started being ammunition. You're not in a relationship anymore. You're in a quiet war, and every moment you try to stay calm, she pulls further away, knowing deep down that you'll keep chasing. Do you know how many men get emotionally gutted by the very thing they thought made them strong? Their patience, their consistency, their ability to endure discomfort, to hold the emotional weight of two people, to give a woman the benefit of the doubt. You thought you were being a rock. She saw a rug. And the more you let her wipe her moods, her doubts, her insecurities onto you without consequence, the more she began to resent you. Not because you were cruel, but because you refused to set the one boundary that commands respect, the line of self-protection. You gave her too much room to play. She could ignore your messages for hours, days, and you still replied with softness. She could cancel plans, change her tone, flirt with someone in front of you, and you still smiled and played it cool. That's what patient men do, right? They wait for the storm to pass. They believe love wins if you just hold on long enough. But what if I told you that some storms are designed to see how far you'll let them go before you drown? She wasn't always like this. There was a time she looked at you with admiration. There was a time she craved your attention, respected your opinion, and smiled just from hearing your voice. But then, something shifted, not all at once, slowly, subtly. You began to notice she'd test you, ignore your calls just to see if you get mad. She'd mention other men, not out of excitement, but calculation. She'd withdraw affection and affectionately mock you when you stayed sweet. It's not random. This is emotional conditioning, the same way you train a dog with rewards and punishments. She was training you, only you didn't realize it because she smiled while doing it. She taught you that the only way to keep her was to silence your needs, that if you spoke up, you were too much. If you asked for clarity, you were insecure. If you pulled away, you were immature. So you stayed. You waited. You rationalized. You became addicted to crumbs, and you called it patience. But listen carefully. Patience without standards isn't love. It's self-erasure. Here's what's really happening when a woman knows you'll never walk away. You lose all leverage. And when there's no risk of loss, there is no need for respect. Your emotional availability, your loyalty, your willingness to try harder, it becomes a tool she can use to dominate the emotional pace of the relationship. She gets to decide when you talk, when you feel good, when you're punished, not with yelling, but with silence. Not with insults, but with withdrawal. And the more you chase, the colder she becomes. Why? Because the chase confirms your powerlessness. It proves you fear her leaving more than you value your own peace. This isn't always conscious. Some women don't even realize they're doing it. But that doesn't make it less real. This is how emotional manipulation hides under the mask of she's just emotional, or she's been through a lot, or maybe I need to be more understanding. But ask yourself, when was the last time she showed you the same grace you gave her? If a woman disappears for a day without explanation, comes back without apology, and you welcome her like nothing happened, you're teaching her how to treat you. If she jokes about training you or calls you her emotional support, that's not cute. That's conditioning. That's someone admitting, without shame, that your love is now a tool, and you've handed her the manual. You want tactical clarity. Here it is. When she pulls away, don't chase. When she ignores your message, don't double text. When she jokes about your emotions, don't laugh with her, look at her and let the silence sit. When she tests you by mentioning another man, don't interrogate her. Just mirror her coldness. And most importantly, if you feel like you're constantly proving your worth while she proves nothing, stop proving. Leave the table. Because respect is not something you earn by tolerating more. It's something you command by walking away sooner. This isn't about being harsh. This is about emotional balance, about self-respect, about not letting your patience become your prison. So let me ask you, have you ever confused patience with weakness and watched her pull away anyway? What moment made you realize your silence was actually killing the attraction? Have you ever walked away too late and regretted not showing your boundaries earlier? You started thinking it would pass, that the coldness was temporary, that if you just gave her more love, more space, more reassurance, she'd come back to the warmth she once gave you. But she didn't. Because here's the brutal truth in her mind. She already figured you out. And once she does that, once she knows exactly how far you'll bend, how deeply you'll care, and how little you'll resist, the game begins. She doesn't test you to understand you. She tests you to reshape you. Slowly, you become less of a man in her eyes and more of a tool, a mirror for her moods, a receiver of her doubts, a shield for her chaos. You're not leading anymore. You're orbiting around her emotions, around her schedule, around her approval. And every time you hesitate to speak up because you don't want to upset her, you sink deeper into her emotional frame. Here's how you know it's happening. You start filtering your words before you speak. You start checking her expression for cues. Is she annoyed? Is she cold? Is she about to pull away? You begin living on emotional eggshells. Not because she yelled at you, but because she subtly punished you. A sarcastic tone, a dry okay, a distant look. She doesn't even need to argue. She just changes her warmth, and you panic. That's not love. That's emotional control. And if you think this makes her happy, think again. The truth is, once she sees you mold yourself around her moods, she starts losing the very thing she was attracted to in the first place. Your strength, your edge, your self-respect. She wanted a man she couldn't fully figure out, someone with emotional discipline, someone who wouldn't crack under her storms. But you flinched, you adjusted, you let her power grow in the space where your boundaries used to be. Let me paint it clearly. Imagine this scene. She comes home from work. She's annoyed, but won't say why. You ask gently, "Rough day?" She shrugs, barely answers. You lean in with affection. She turns her head. You ask if she wants to talk. She grabs her phone. Now you're uncomfortable. You feel like you've done something wrong, even though you haven't. So you get quieter, smaller, hoping to avoid more withdrawal. You tiptoe around her silence. You ask if she's okay again. She sighs, says, "You're too much sometimes." And just like that, you're ashamed for caring. What just happened? She shifted the emotional frame and you gave it to her. You want to break that cycle. Stop chasing comfort from someone who uses it as currency. When her mood shifts, don't panic. Mirror it with calm detachment. If she gives silence, don't fill it. If she becomes distant, don't plead. Observe and then decide. Does this energy serve your peace? If not, you leave not with rage, but with clarity. Because if your calm has to be bought with emotional submission, it's not calm, it's control. Here's a tactical shift you need to internalize. Don't reward unpredictability with increased affection. That's how you train her to keep using it. You need to create emotional consequences, not with yelling, not with guilt, but with space, with silence, with slowed response time, with your absence. You don't owe instant answers to someone who gives you delayed love. You don't need to be understanding of behaviors that slowly erode your self-worth. Patience doesn't mean standing still. It means waiting with self-respect. That means you can wait for her to calm down without offering yourself as an emotional punching bag. That means you can give space, but only once. Not again and again while she rewrites the rules of how she treats you. Because every time you tolerate it without comment, you're telling her this works on me. Let me tell you what happens when you stop reacting. She feels it deeply, not because she's scared you're mad, but because she loses the emotional upper hand. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer always available. You're no longer dancing to her silence. And in that stillness, she sees something most women quietly crave, a man who cannot be controlled with games. It's not your anger that makes you powerful. It's your indifference. It's your ability to sit in discomfort, not as a victim, but as a mirror, to show her that you're not afraid of losing her because you've already found yourself. And nothing threatens a manipulative pattern more than a man who is no longer emotionally reactive. So start asking the hard questions when she pulls away. Do you shrink when she punishes you with silence? Do you beg for peace when she tests you? Do you try to prove your love, or do you step back and let her reveal who she really is? You don't need to yell. You don't need to explain. You just need to stop feeding the cycle. Pull your energy back. Watch what happens. And if she can't meet you with the same maturity you gave her, then you don't have a partner. You have a power struggle dressed in affection. So tell me this, have you ever been punished with silence and thought it was your fault? How many times have you confused emotional distance with your own inadequacy when you pulled away calmly? Did she chase or vanish? There's a moment every man reaches, the moment you realize that no matter how calm you stay, no matter how much patience you pour into the relationship, something inside her always feels unsatisfied. You gave her your attention, your time, your care, but she looks at you like she's waiting for something more. And that more isn't love, it's reaction. She's not trying to build with you. She's trying to move you, to see if she can still control how you feel, what you do, how far you'll bend without breaking. That's the core of emotional manipulation. It's not loud, it's not abusive in the way you think. It's soft, it's subtle. It wears a smile and calls itself just being honest. But behind that, honesty is a test. Will you still love me if I slowly stop loving you? Will you still stay if I treat you like an option? Will you still wait if I withhold what you want most? And you probably did, because you're not dramatic. You don't storm out. You don't play games. You've been taught that a good man doesn't give up easily. But listen closely, a wise man doesn't stay somewhere his worth is slowly eroded. This isn't about quitting. It's about recognizing that some women don't want love. They want power. And the more stable and loyal you are, the more their hunger to destabilize you grows. They'll withhold affection to test your loyalty. They'll show interest in another man to test your confidence. They'll provoke jealousy, then mock you for reacting. They'll criticize your tone when you finally speak up and call you emotionally immature. They'll demand openness but punish your vulnerability. That's not feminine unpredictability. That's psychological warfare. And you are on the front line without armor. Now here's the tactical truth. Emotional manipulation thrives on reaction. Your reaction is the currency. Your emotional labor is the reward. If you stop reacting not in anger, but in measured silence, the entire manipulation framework begins to crumble, because it cannot sustain itself without your emotional energy. Think of it like this. She drops a cold comment. You never make me feel the way he did. That's not a statement. That's bait. You're supposed to panic, to ask who he is, to fight for her attention, to feel insecure. But if you simply look at her and respond, then maybe you should talk to him and walk away. You've shattered the game, because now she's uncertain. She doesn't know what you're thinking. She doesn't know if you're affected. She doesn't know if you're about to leave. And that uncertainty, when held in silence by a man who knows his value, is devastating to someone who relied on emotional control. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove you're better. You just need to hold your frame, to protect your peace, to show, not tell, that you're not available for manipulation no matter how beautiful, clever, or seductive the packaging may be. Let me give you another real-life example. A man I coached once told me he hadn't had a real conversation with his girlfriend in weeks. She'd reply to his texts with one-word answers, avoided eye contact, flirted with her co-worker in front of him. But every time he tried to bring it up, she'd say, "You're overthinking it. You're too emotional. I need space." He waited. He cooked her favorite meals. He bought her flowers. She barely acknowledged them. One night, she came home drunk, dropped her purse on the floor, and mumbled, "You're lucky I haven't left yet." That night, he said nothing. He picked up her purse, placed it gently on the table, and went to bed. The next morning, he packed a bag and left without a word. 2 days later, she was the one crying in his messages, not because she missed him, but because the control was gone. That's the pivot point you need to feel inside your bones when your silence becomes stronger than your begging. You win. Not to punish her, but to protect yourself. Because no woman who truly loves you will weaponize your calm against you. No woman who respects you will punish your loyalty. No woman who's worth keeping will confuse patience with power over you. So when you find yourself explaining the same feelings again and again, when you're constantly questioning whether you're too sensitive, when her distance feels like a punishment you earned, that's the sign. You're not in a relationship. You're in an emotional hostage situation, and the only way out is not louder love. It's cleaner exit, but most men don't exit. They endure. They wait for her to realize she's pushing too far. But she won't, because the more you let her push, the more she'll believe you'll never leave. So she never has to change. So ask yourself now, have you ever stayed longer because you hoped she'd stop testing you? What happened the first time you truly went cold and didn't chase her when she lost control? Did she get mean or get real? By now, you've probably started to feel something shift, not just in how you see her, but in how you see yourself. You're beginning to realize that the weight you've been carrying, the mood management, the second guessing, the emotional acrobatics, it wasn't love, it was labor. And you weren't just her partner, you were her emotional shock absorber, her validation dispenser, her fallback when attention from others faded. And what did you get in return? Moments, glimpses of warmth, conditional softness, a little affection when you behaved the right way, but not respect, not safety, not partnership. That's the final twist of emotional manipulation. She never tells you to change. She makes you feel like you should until you're no longer yourself. At first, it's small. She sighs when you laugh too loud, says you're too intense when you share something vulnerable, rolls her eyes when you show excitement. So you tone it down, you adjust, you silence parts of yourself to make the relationship easier. And then one day, you wake up, muted, careful, dull. She didn't just control the relationship, she reshaped the man in it. And the scariest part, you thought you were doing the right thing. Because this kind of manipulation doesn't come with yelling or slamming doors. It comes with sweet language wrapped in sharp timing, cold distance followed by sudden affection, disapproval delivered with a smile. You're just being sensitive. It's not that deep. You always take things the wrong way. Over time, you stop trusting your own reactions. You start wondering if you're the problem, and she lets you. That's called gaslighting, not the meme version, the real, quiet kind where her denial becomes so confident, so consistent, that you question your own reality. You begin apologizing for emotions you never meant to feel. You start rehearsing conversations in your head to make sure you don't say the wrong thing. You hesitate before bringing up anything real because you already know how she'll twist it. That is not love. That is slow psychological erosion. And let me be brutally clear, any relationship that requires you to suppress yourself in order to survive is not worth staying in another day. Because the longer you stay, the more you forget what normal feels like. Normal isn't walking on eggshells. Normal isn't being punished for asking for affection. Normal isn't earning silence because you voiced a need. Normal is peace, stability, respect, a woman who challenges you without wounding you, who speaks directly without destroying your confidence, who doesn't treat your emotional investment like a weapon she can use when she's bored. If you've never experienced that, I'm not surprised. Too many men don't even know it exists, because they were raised to believe that enduring mistreatment is part of proving love. That being the bigger man means being the more silent one. But you weren't built to be emotionally invisible. You were built to lead with strength and clarity. You were built to set the tone, not absorb the chaos. So here's the most important tactical shift of all. You must stop trying to fix the dynamic and start exiting it. You can't fix what was designed to disempower you. You can't reason with a woman who benefits from your confusion. You can't negotiate self-worth with someone who sees your empathy as weakness. The moment you try to talk it out again, you're already losing. Because every conversation becomes a trap. You think you're asking for change, but you're actually showing her that you're still emotionally dependent on her approval. The real shift happens in silence, in action, in detachment. That means you don't announce your boundaries, you enforce them. You don't beg for respect, you embody it. You don't warn her that you're losing interest. You let her feel it when you stop overgiving. You don't try to prove you're a good man. You act like one and let the consequences sort themselves out. And when she asks what's wrong, you don't explain your silence. You let her sit in it, because your silence now says what your words never could. I see what you're doing, and I'm no longer afraid to leave. You want to make her change, don't. Make yourself unavailable to the game. The right woman doesn't need control to feel loved. The wrong one doesn't love you, she loves what your weakness gives her. Attention, apology, access. Take that away, and she has nothing left to manipulate. So now, ask yourself, have you been communicating in ways that only reinforce her power? What's one behavior you've been tolerating that, deep down, you know is disrespect? And what would happen if instead of confronting her, you just stopped responding to the game entirely? You've made it this far because something inside you already knew. You've felt it in your gut for weeks, months, maybe even years. That quiet ache, that feeling that something wasn't right. Even when everything looked normal on the surface, you kept telling yourself she just needed time, that if you were more patient, more present, more understanding, she would come back to you. But deep down, you weren't really waiting for her to come back. You were waiting for yourself. Because you haven't been you in a while. You've been edited, trimmed down to the version of yourself that she could control. You spoke softer. You joked less. You said sorry for things that weren't wrong. You stopped teasing her because she didn't like it. You stopped bringing up problems because she didn't want drama. You gave her the benefit of the doubt over and over again until you realized the only thing you doubted anymore was yourself. That's the final cost of emotional manipulation. It doesn't just exhaust you, it remakes you into something smaller, safer, easier to hold. But you weren't born to be held. You were born to lead, to speak truth, to love with clarity, not desperation, to be patient, yes, but not passive, because passivity is not peace. It is quiet pain. And now, finally, you see it. You see the trap for what it is. You see her patterns not as mysterious, but mechanical. You recognize the cycles: withdrawal, provocation, affection, denial, all part of a loop designed to keep you off balance, unsure and chasing, but not anymore. Now you reclaim your edge, you reclaim your boundaries, you reclaim your silence not as surrender, but as power. Because power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it walks away. Sometimes it simply refuses to engage with anything that insults its worth. You want to know the hardest part? She might not even react when you go silent. She might not chase when you finally stop giving. She might let you go without a fight. And that will tempt you to believe it meant nothing. But don't fall for that final illusion. She didn't stay silent because you weren't valuable. She stayed silent because your value no longer bent to her will. That silence was her last move, the final play in a game she could no longer win. Let her play it, let her go, because now you win not by taking control over her, but by taking control back from her. You win by not needing the validation. You win by not responding to chaos. You win by realizing that the most masculine energy in the room is not the one that dominates, but the one that refuses to be dominated. So here's what you do next. You stop explaining your silence. You stop announcing your change. You stop trying to earn affection. You move with dignity, with precision, with absence, the kind of absence that makes anyone who once underestimated you realize they were never holding you. You were holding back. And from this moment forward, you never forget the lesson. If a woman starts using your patience as a leash, cut it. If she starts testing you like a child tests a fence, don't reinforce it. Step away. If your love is only valued when it's at her feet, then she never saw your worth to begin with. Because love without respect is not love. Attraction without peace is not worth it. And patience without protection is just quiet suffering. So now I leave you with this. She didn't break you. She revealed what you were too afraid to protect.